Hey friends, it's Robin. Welcome back to my channel. Today we are doing one of the final rounds of my recent reads. So I have 10 more books to talk about. We are going to kick it off with the couple of books that I didn't love so much, and then we'll work our way through some of the ones that I really loved. So starting off with my one DNF, I ended up DNFing Blood Debts by Terry J. Benton Walker. This is a 2023 arc that I was just so excited for that I decided to read it in October, or attempt to read it. I did end up DNFing this one at 82%, so I made it pretty far in here, and this is a pretty long book, and it is following these two twins who are part of this family who have generational magic. And in this world, there are a couple of different types of people who have magic. There is the people who have generational magic, there are white witches, and I think like moon witches or something like that. The plot of this one is a little difficult to explain because I'm trying to remember off the top of my head like what is spoilery and what isn't. But the setup for this book is that the family that we are following used to be in charge of like the council for generational magic, but their ancestors that sat on that council ended up being lynched by the mayor's family after they were accused of murdering his wife, and it ended up this whole starting this whole political war, and the family got shunned from the council, and now we are in present day, and the two twins are kind of discovering that the things that happened back then might not be really what happened. They are trying to kind of save their family name and uncover possibly some people that wrongly killed members of their family and who's behind it all and all of these things. I really loved the setup for this book. I loved the idea of generational magic. I loved the idea of the gods. I liked the setup for the twins because they definitely have a very strained and messy relationship. Despite all of that, they are kind of like the ones that are always there for each other, and I really liked that. However, there were just certain things about this book that they weren't quite working for me. The pacing was a little odd. There were so many things going on that I started losing track of things. There were just so many plot points. And there were ones that I was super interested in and other ones that I wasn't. And I'm sure at the end they were all going to come together. I don't know if this is the kickoff to a series or if it was a total standalone because I didn't finish it. But by the time that I got to the 82% mark, which is where I put it down, is that like I was pretty much lost at that point. And I was like, I don't really care what happens because I don't understand what is happening anymore. And I don't know if it was me as a reader because I don't read a ton of fantasy, or if it was just because there was so many different things going on. I will also say that this was a really early art copy. I read it in October and it didn't come out for like 6 or 7 more months. So some of that stuff might change going forward. So I don't want to put anyone off of reading this. Like I said, it did have really good characters and themes and all of that stuff. It didn't quite work for me as a reader and like what I'm looking for. But if you are like a fantasy reader, especially YA fantasy, I do recommend giving this one a try because there was a lot of really good stuff in here. It wasn't my book, unfortunately. And then I think the biggest disappointment, and this one is going to hurt you and it hurts me, but that is Archangel's Resurrection by Nalini Singh. I adore this series. I absolutely adore the series, and I've given the last couple of books really high ratings. Unfortunately, I gave this one 2.5 stars. I just didn't see the point of this book. Like, what was the purpose of this addition to the series? Like, it didn't add anything. This is following Alexander, who is one of the archangels. This is book 15 in the series, so I'm gonna be pretty vague about this because I don't want to spoil it for anyone who is interested in the series. And it is kind of like a fated mates type of situation. I, one, didn't like their romance. Their romance was so toxic. And it was one of those things where it's like they have this big epic love story, right? Like it goes on for millennia. But these two were the epitome of like a bad cycle. By the time that we got to like the present day, I was like, y'all have done this so many times, and like you're happy for hundreds of years before you go into a toxic situation. So like what about this is supposed to lead me to believe that that's not what's going to happen again? And so like I just didn't understand. Like I was like, what's different this time? Like, and then there was nothing in this that really moved the story forward in any way. Like, this didn't add plot. So, like, we got a little bit of closure on some stuff that was a little left open and some, like, past information. There is a character called Nasser who we knew quite a bit about, but we never really knew his childhood origin story. And you got it in here, but like, I could have never known that, and the series wouldn't have been worse off for it. By the time I was done with this, I was just like, I don't understand what this added to the series. Especially, like I said, I think the last two were 5 stars for me. And so to go from that to this was just, it was kind of a bummer. After that, I read Astrid Parker Doesn't Care by Ashley Herring Blake, and this was another weirdly disappointing one. I did give this one 3 stars, but Delilah Green Doesn't Care is one of my favorite books. I give that 5 stars. I loved that romance, and this one was just a 3 star. Like, it wasn't bad, but this definitely did not live up to Delilah. My two biggest issues with this one were, again, the romance. I could never really get on board with why these two liked each other. I liked both of them as characters. I talked about this a lot in like my anticipation for this book, but Astrid is such a fascinating character to me, like, to follow in a romance, because she is so tightly wound and so like needs to be in control of her own life, that I thought like following her in a romance was going to be fascinating because she's so unlikable, so tightly wound, and I wanted to know like who could undo her. And I actually really liked Jordan as a character as well. I thought she was really fun and sweet and cute, but like the two of them together, it wasn't that I didn't understand it. They just didn't have they gave me nothing. They gave me nothing chemistry wise, which is funny because like the sex scenes in here were top tier, like fantastic. But outside of that, I thought they had no chemistry. I didn't understand why they liked each other. I feel really bad because like I feel like I'm being harsh on this simply for the fact that Delilah was such a good book that I like loved it so much that I feel like I'm a little extra hard on this one. And then on top of that, like the plot for this one was a little meandering. Like we did a lot of the same stuff over and over again and had the same conversations over and over and over again. Both of those things, while they deterred from my enjoyment, my actual biggest issue with this book, and this is, I've read a lot of Ashley Herring Blake books, and this has never happened in any of them before, but this book was so on the nose with its like themes and messaging, and it got to be kind of annoying. And like I said, I've read a lot of Ashley Herring Blake books, a lot of them, and I love the way that she does her messages and like themes and things, but this one, it was too much. It was too much. I couldn't tell what the purpose of it was, essentially, because it's a sapphic romance. So I feel like the people that are picking up this book know what they're getting into. Your audience is the LGBTQ plus community and allies, right? Like, but this book, it was nonstop about like, here's the importance of asking about pronouns, and here is the importance about having queer friendly communities. And here is the point of, and I was just like, yeah, I know. And like it happened a lot. And I'm not saying like it was subtle, and that was the problem. Is it wasn't subtle. It wasn't like an overarching theme. It was all the time, just like on page. After a while, it was just like, this is kind of obnoxious to read about. Because like I said, I didn't understand the point of putting that into this book. Not just putting it into the book, but not doing it in an elegant way. Because like I said, the people that are picking up this book probably already ask about pronouns and share pronouns. And if they're not, there was a way to do it that wasn't this. And I am very pro like consent's important, pronouns are important, having a queer community is important, like having these discussions is all important. I love that in my books. But this was not, it was not a good way. It was not good. I didn't like it. Okay. Now that I've ranted about a book that I gave 3 stars to, if you liked the series, I do still recommend reading this one. I am still excited about the third one. I don't want you to think that I hated it. This book felt rushed. Like, I feel like this book should have been delayed until next year. That's my opinion. So anyways, moving on. After that, I did a reread of A Marvelous Light by Freya Marsk, and this is the first book in the, oh, what is this series called? I don't remember what this series is called, but the sequel just came out, and I wanted to reread this because I went to go pick up A Restless Truth, which is book 2, and I couldn't remember what happened. So I ended up listening to this on audio. This was 5 stars again. I absolutely love this series. I think I talked about this last year. Is that when I read it? I don't even remember anymore, guys. I loved it just as much the second time around. I love these characters. I love this world. I love this magic. Just a very good time. I'm not going to dwell on this because it was just a reread, but I do still absolutely love the series. And I have like 15 pages left in book 2, so that will be in the next recent reads. After that was Bad Habit by Onley James and Neve Wilder. This I picked up because I am still on my Onley James binge. I am trying to wrap up the last, I think I have 4 books of hers left, so that I can do a video, a guide to Onley James. Super excited for that video. But I gave this one 3 stars. This is actually probably my least favorite Onley James book so far, which I think part of it was because of the topic in here. So this book is following a programmer. If you don't know, hi, I'm Robin. I'm a programmer. And there is an author note at the beginning of this book that's like, hey, we're not programmers and we don't know what we're talking about, essentially, which I did appreciate. But there were just a couple of little things in here that I was just like, that's not how that works. For example, they talk a lot about how code is scrolling across the screen, and that it doesn't really, like, unless you are frantically typing, it doesn't scroll like that. And I was just like, how fast is he typing? This book follows out, like I said, our main character who is at the beginning of the book a teenager. I want to say he's like 16. He is in New York and without money. He ran away from home and he has no other options. And as he is kind of like trying to sell himself, he ends up being saved by this like 20-ish year old who turns out is a bounty hunter, a kill for hire. And so he ends up moving in with this guy. He really starts developing feelings for him, and the older guy like doesn't really see him that way. And so he runs away and ends up becoming this programmer who can hack into absolutely anything, and he kind of travels all over the world doing illegal jobs. And right at the beginning of the book, he ends up being, I think he's in Ukraine, some people who break in to the room where he is hacking into, I think, some Russian infrastructure. And he flees and he goes back to New York and he ends up running into the guy from his past, and the two of them have a second chance romance. And there's just like a lot of ridiculous stuff that happens. They're trying to figure out who is after him, why is there a bounty on his head, like what the stuff that he was hacking into, what does it all mean? How do they save him? How do they get him out of this? And like I said, it was kind of ridiculous. I had a good time with it, but it just isn't something that I loved. And because I'm not a hacker, but because I do have personal knowledge about programming, some of it wasn't quite right, deter my enjoyment a little bit. I tried to not let it like impact my enjoyment, but it kind of did. And it's just this type of over-the-top suspense romance isn't always my favorite, and this one fell into that category, unfortunately. Then we have Two Wrongs Make a Right by Chloe Leese, and this one I gave 4 stars. And this is one of those books that I thought was going to be a 5-star for almost the entirety of the book. So this one is a Much Ado About Nothing retelling, and you are following these 2 main characters who have this really terrible meet cute. They meet each other at a party. Neither one of them is good at like first impressions and small talk, and they end up just getting off on the totally wrong foot. But their friends keep butting in. They end up getting set up on a blind date with each other unknowingly. And when they show up and they discover that it is each other, they decide to formulate a plan to get back at their meddling friends. And so they decide that they are going to fake date, and they are going to convince everyone that they are happily in love, and then they are going to break up with each other and get back with their friends. And of course, they end up falling in love, and it was really, really cute. This has great neurodiverse representation. This has great anxiety representation. I love how Chloe Leese always incorporates that into her romances. I love how she incorporates like safe and consensual sex into her romances. There are so many things that she does so well in her romances. However, the third act breakup in here was awful. I want to say it nicer than that, but it made me straight up mad. Like, I was so annoyed by the third act breakup in here. I get that people get mad about it like most of the time, but like that's how story arcs work. Like, I'm fine with it. But it made no sense to me. Like, I could not follow the logic of this third act breakup, and I didn't like it. I didn't like it. I'm not going to spoil it, obviously. You can go into it and figure out whether or not it works for you or not. It didn't work for me. It made me mad, and I took 1 entire star off because I didn't like that third act breakup. So, and then the last of the like standalone books, I guess. I'm going to talk about a series after this. But the next one was Before I Let Go by Kennedy Ryan, and this is a 5-star book. Holy hell. This book killed me. It destroyed me. It broke me into little bits and then built me back up. I have tabs in here. I never tab books. This book is so beautiful. This is a second chance romance between a couple who divorced 2 years ago. They have 2 children together and they went through something very, very tragic and it ended up breaking them apart. There are some massive content warnings for this book, huge content warnings for miscarriage and stillbirth and massive depression and anxiety. This book goes into detail on all of those things. You do walk through the entire scene of her losing their child. You really get in her head as she was going through her depressive episode and what that cost her. It is so difficult to read at times, but it is done in the most exceptional way. Like, Kennedy Ryan really took care with these characters, with this story, with this plot. It is fantastic. I cannot say enough good things about this. This is definitely like a slow build. It was worth every heartbreaking moment. This is definitely a favorite of the year. This was just so beautiful. And then the last 3 books I'm going to talk about are all part of the Criminal Intention series. So we have Where There's Smoke, Cult of Personality, and Collateral Damage by Cole McCade. If you've watched my last couple of rounds of recent reads, you know that I am completely obsessed with this series, like utterly obsessed. I think Where There's Smoke is my current favorite of the series because it was just perfection. But I gave all 3 of these 5 stars, all of them. I love them. I love them so much. Again, I can't really talk too much about this series at this point because it is a series and we are, I think, 9 books in at this point. But if you have gotten to Collateral Damage, this title is so appropriate because I feel like Collateral Damage. My heart hurts and I need to know I need to know what happens next because I need to know that these characters are okay. This is one of those series that really makes you completely and utterly attached to these characters. And I need to know that they are okay. Like, I need to know that these people that I love are all right. I have so many people messaging me about the series now, and it is fantastic because I need all of the emotional support to get through the rest of the series. This series is just, it's going there. I love it. I love Cole McCade's writing. I love all of the representation in this series. I love the like mystery elements in here. Like, each of these mysteries does such a good job of being kind of brutal and realistic while also always having these like sense of hope in there. And the characters talk about that too, where they like can't lose hope, otherwise like the job will destroy them. And I love all of those discussions. And this is one of those series that sometimes I'm like, oh, I should turn that show on that I really like. And then I realized that it's this series and it's not a show I'm watching. I'm really loving this. It's kind of my like low-key goal to finish season 1 by the end of the year, but we'll see if that actually happens. I think I have like 4-ish books left, so we'll see if it actually happens, but I'm obsessed. So 5 stars to all of those. And that is it for this round of recent reads. I think I'm gonna have 1 more of these this year, which is wild to think about. I just filmed another video and I'm gonna try and not say, oh my god, how's it the end of 2022 in every single video, but how is it the end of 2022? That is it for this round of recent reads. Let me know if you've read any of these. Let me know what your last 5-star book was, and I will catch y'all in my next video. Bye!